My name's Mark, and I've been married to Elise for 8 years. For most of that time, I thought we were solid, not perfect, just comfortable. But lately, something had changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, the kind of distance that grows quietly until one day you realize you're standing on opposite sides of a canyon you didn't notice forming. It started small phone calls she'd end the second I walked into the room, messages she'd forget to mention, and a new tone in her voice when she talked about work, excitement, energy, words that used to describe how she spoke to me. Then one Saturday she said it. "Oh, by the way, there's a work barbecue next weekend. You should probably come. Should probably come. Not I'd love for you to meet my team, not it'll be fun." Just a reluctant suggestion, like she was fulfilling a social obligation she didn't believe in. I smiled anyway. "Sure," I said. "Sounds great." Maybe I wanted to see what her world looked like now, the world she talked about more than our own. The barbecue was held at her company's headquarters, a sleek building with glass walls, modern furniture, and an outdoor patio that screamed corporate success. As soon as we stepped out of the car, Elise changed. Her posture straightened, her pace quickened, and her smile became polished. Not warm, not real, but practiced. She introduced me to her co-workers with the same detached politeness you'd use when pointing out a decorative plant. "This is my husband." That was it. No Mark. No, he runs his own business. No, he's been my rock through grad school. Just husband, as if the title alone was enough to explain my existence. At first I laughed it off. Maybe she was nervous. Maybe she didn't want to mix personal life with work. But then, every time I spoke to someone, she'd find a reason to slip away. When a marketing guy started talking about weekend golf, she suddenly needed to check on the food. When another mentioned buying a new truck, she just had to check her emails. Every conversation that could have included me became her cue to vanish. It wasn't subtle. It was calculated. By the third hour, I'd stopped pretending. I stood near the bar, watching her glide between conversations, with easy laughter glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. I wasn't jealous, not in the romantic sense. I was just tired of being invisible. That's when I noticed a woman watching me. She was in her early 40s, confident, the kind of person who didn't just enter a room, she owned it. She started walking toward me, and before I could second-guess it, she smiled and extended a hand. "You must be the mysterious husband," she said. "I'm Diana, the regional director." I shook her hand, surprised by the warmth in her tone. "Mysterious." She laughed. "Your wife talks about work all the time, but she's very private about her home life. People were starting to wonder if you actually existed." "Guilty as charged," I said with a grin. "Mind if I join you? I'm escaping small talk." We started talking, and for the first time that day I felt human again. She asked real questions about my business, how I built it, how I handled supply shortages, what trends I'd noticed in the market. It wasn't flattery. She was genuinely interested. I found myself relaxing, actually laughing. After 20 minutes, she tilted her head and said, "I have to admit I'm surprised." "By what?" I asked. "Well," she said carefully, "based on how Elise talks about her home life, I expected someone completely different." That caught me off guard. Different how? Diana hesitated. "Oh, you know how people vent at work sometimes." "Nothing serious." But I saw it in her eyes. Elise had been complaining about me. Maybe even mocking me. "Be honest," I said. "What kind of person were you expecting to meet?" Diana smiled awkwardly. "Honestly, someone less confident, less engaging. Elise makes it sound like you two have almost nothing in common." Across the patio, Elise was laughing with a group of men from accounting. She hadn't looked in my direction once in half an hour. "Apparently we don't," I said quietly. Diana followed my gaze. Her expression softened. "Your wife is ambitious. Sometimes people get so focused on climbing that they forget who helped build the ladder." "That's a diplomatic way of saying she's been bad-mouthing me to get ahead," I said. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." She smiled faintly. "You're sharper than she gives you credit for." I couldn't help but laugh. That seems to be the theme of my day. We kept talking about business, about travel, about how strange office politics can be. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then Diana looked at me thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "half the women here complain their husbands don't do enough. Your wife complains you do too much, that you're too independent, that you don't need her for anything. The words hit harder than I expected. That's when it clicked. Elise wasn't embarrassed because I was unsuccessful. She was embarrassed because I didn't need her validation. Before I could respond, Diana checked her watch. I should mingle more, but this has been refreshing. You're an interesting man, Mark. She paused, then asked, would you ever want to grab coffee sometime? It wasn't about business. Her tone said it clearly. I smiled politely. That's flattering, but I'm married. I nodded toward Elise. Diana's eyes widened. She's your wife. For 8 years, I said. I had no idea, she murmured. She never speaks about you like that. Like what? Like someone she's proud of. Before I could say anything, I heard footsteps approaching fast. Elise appeared beside me, wearing a forced smile. There you are. I was wondering where you disappeared to. She was lying. She hadn't been looking for me at all. I was just talking with your husband, Diana said pleasantly. He's quite fascinating. Oh, he can be, Elise replied with a tone that said he can also be a problem. Diana glanced between us, then smiled politely. Well, this was lovely. I'll see you both around. When she left, Elise's mask dropped. What was that, she hissed. What was what? You were flirting with my boss. I stared at her. She was being polite. You might want to try it sometime. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare embarrass me in front of these people. I let out a quiet laugh. Embarrass you, Elise. You've spent the entire afternoon pretending I don't exist. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no defense. This is my workplace, she whispered sharply. These people are important to my career. I need to maintain a certain image. What image, I asked. One that doesn't include your husband. Her silence said everything. That's when I realized something. Elise wasn't ashamed of me. She was ashamed to be seen with me. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't angry. I was done. When we got home that night, the silence was deafening. Not the comfortable kind we used to share when watching TV after dinner. This was the heavy kind filled with unsaid words and sharp glances. Elise went straight upstairs without saying goodnight. I stayed on the couch, staring at the dark TV screen. My reflection looked tired, not angry, just hollow. I wasn't sure which hurt more, the fact that she'd been embarrassed by me in front of her colleagues, or the fact that I hadn't even been surprised. I'd seen it coming. The moment she said you should probably come, I knew what kind of night it would be. But what happened next wasn't something I planned. It just unfolded naturally, painfully, inevitably. The following Monday, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard a familiar, calm voice. Mark. It's Diana. I just wanted to apologize if I made things awkward the other day. I hesitated. You didn't do anything wrong. She paused. Your wife seemed uncomfortable. That's one word for it. There was a short silence, the kind that carries weight. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said. But for what it's worth, I think you handled it gracefully. I smiled faintly. Thanks. That means something coming from you. Before we hung up, she added, if you ever want to grab that coffee, just as friends, no pressure, my offer still stands. I didn't answer right away. Maybe I said finally. We'll see. That evening, Elise came home later than usual. She walked in with that clipped professional tone she always used when she was pretending not to be upset. I talked to my boss today, she said. Oh, she mentioned that you two spoke on the phone. Yeah. She called to apologize for making you uncomfortable. Her eyes narrowed. Did she, or was that her excuse to talk to you again? I sighed. At least this isn't a competition. She crossed her arms. You made me look foolish in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what people are saying? What people are saying? I repeated. You mean your coworkers, the same ones you didn't want knowing you were married to me? That's not fair. No, what's not fair, I said quietly, is you treating me like an inconvenience until someone else notices me. You can't erase me all afternoon and then suddenly claim ownership when it threatens your image. Her jaw tightened. You're twisting this. Am I because from where I stood you didn't want a husband that day? You wanted a prop. She didn't respond. I could see her trying to find a version of the story where she wasn't the villain. But there wasn't one. Finally, she said, you embarrassed me in front of my boss. I looked at her stunned. Your boss invited me for coffee. How exactly did I embarrass you? You should have said no immediately. I did. Not in front of her, you could have waited until later. So let me get this straight, I said. You wanted me to protect your image by pretending I'm invisible again. She glared at me, eyes burning. You wouldn't understand. I've worked years to be taken seriously there. I can't afford to look unprofessional. And being married to me makes you look unprofessional. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you meant. The silence that followed was worse than yelling. That night she slept in the guest room. I stayed awake thinking about what Diana said at the barbecue, that Elise was ambitious to a fault. At the time, I'd brushed it off. But now I understood. Elise didn't see people. She saw positions. At work, she wanted to be the one everyone admired. At home, she wanted a husband who stayed out of her spotlight. Someone who existed quietly in the background, dependable, invisible, safe. I used to think we were a team, but maybe I'd been the only one who believed that. 2 days later, I ran into Diana again, purely by coincidence. I was grabbing lunch downtown, and she walked into the same cafe. She spotted me immediately and smiled. "Mark," she said, walking over. "I was just thinking about calling you. Then the universe saved you a phone call." She laughed. "Mind if I join you?" I nodded, please. The conversation was easy, effortless. We talked about business books, travel, all the things I'd once tried to talk to Elise about before she started answering everything with, "I'm too tired." Halfway through, Diana leaned back in her chair and said, "I hope you don't think I'm crossing a line here, but your wife doesn't appreciate you." "Not really." I didn't argue. "You're not wrong. She acts like your success takes something away from her. But from what I see, it adds to who you are." "I think she sees it as competition," I admitted. Her whole life is about being impressive. Being around me just reminds her she's not the only one. Diana nodded. "That's not partnership, that's branding." We both laughed, but it wasn't funny. When we left the cafe, she said, "If you ever need someone to talk to about anything, you know where to find me." "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. That night, Elise noticed something. Maybe it was the calm in my tone or the way I wasn't trying to fix things anymore. "What's going on with you?" she asked cautiously. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About how I've spent years trying to make you proud," I said softly, "and somehow that turned into a reason for you to be ashamed." She looked caught off guard. "I'm not ashamed of you." "Then why did you treat me like an accessory at your barbecue?" "I told you it's complicated." "No," I said. "It's actually very simple. You wanted to be the most impressive person in the room, and you thought being with me made that harder." Her eyes darted away. "You're exaggerating." I shook my head. "You've been selling a version of yourself that doesn't include me. And for the record, I'm done buying it." She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "So what happens now?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." I went upstairs, packed a small overnight bag, and paused at the door. "I'm staying at my brother's for a few days. Don't wait up. Mark?" But I didn't turn around. As I drove away, I felt something strange, not anger, not relief. It was like the air had cleared, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm when the damage is still there, but you can finally breathe. That was the moment I realized the person I married had become someone I couldn't recognize. And maybe losing her wasn't the tragedy I thought it would be. The morning after I left the house felt different, even though I wasn't there to see it. Elise texted me 3 times before noon. "We need to talk. You can't just walk away like this. You're overreacting." I didn't reply. For the first time in years, I felt calm. I spent the morning helping my brother fix his porch light and realized how good it felt to be useful without walking on eggshells. I wasn't thinking about Elise or her colleagues or what anyone thought of me, just the sound of a wrench turning and the sun on my back. Simple peace. But peace doesn't last when someone like Elise is losing control. That afternoon, she called. I didn't pick up. Then came the email, long polished and defensive. She said she'd been under pressure, that she hadn't meant to hurt me, that her behavior was misinterpreted. Her exact words, "I just wanted to maintain professionalism." You know how image matters in corporate environments. Professionalism, that was her justification for treating me like I was beneath her. I closed the laptop. For years, I'd tried to understand her, the long hours, the obsession with perception, the way she'd measure her worth by who praised her at work. But now I saw it clearly. Elise didn't want a partner. She wanted an accessory, someone she could polish when needed and tuck away when not. 2 days later, I agreed to meet Diana for coffee. I didn't tell her everything, but she didn't need me to. She already knew most of it just from watching Elise that day at the barbecue. We met at a quiet corner cafe downtown. When she arrived, she smiled, not the kind of polite smile Elise used, but one that looked real. "I wasn't sure you'd show," she said. Neither was I. We talked about everything but Elise at first business travel books life. Then halfway through her cappuccino, she said, "You don't have to say it, but I can tell you're done trying to fix something that doesn't want to be fixed." I exhaled. "You're not wrong. She's been trying to shape you into something you're not. But the truth is, the version of you she wanted, that's not who she married. I think she fell in love with potential," I said. "Not the person." Diana nodded slowly. "And potential is only attractive until it threatens someone's ego." That hit harder than I expected. We sat quietly for a moment before she added, "You know, I respect what you did walking away without making a scene. That takes strength." "Walking away was the easy part," I said. "Staying away, that's harder." That night, Elise showed up at my brother's place. I should have expected it. She stood at the door holding takeout like it was peace offering disguised as dinner. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You can talk. I'll listen." She hesitated, clearly not expecting that response. "I shouldn't have treated you that way. I got caught up in work. I wanted to make a good impression." "You wanted to look perfect," I said. "And you couldn't do that standing next to someone who reminded you that perfection doesn't exist." "That's not true." "It is," I said softly. "You think success is about who looks more polished, who speaks the right way. I built something with my hands. You built something on appearances. We stopped speaking the same language a long time ago." She looked down. "You make it sound like I'm a bad person." "No," I said. "You're not bad. You're just lost. You keep chasing validation from people who'll forget your name the second they change jobs." She flinched, but I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was just being honest. "I don't want to lose you," she said finally. "We can fix this." "At least you can't fix something you don't respect." Her eyes glistened, and for a brief moment, I almost softened. But then I remembered standing at that barbecue, invisible beside her, while she laughed with people who didn't even know my name. "I loved you," I said. "And maybe I still do in some way, but I can't go back to being a shadow in my own marriage." She didn't respond. She just stood there, tears slipping down her face while I walked back inside. The next few days were quiet. I went back to work, met clients, stayed focused. Each time my phone buzzed with her name, I let it ring. Then one afternoon, Diana called. "I wanted to see how you're doing." "Better," I said, lighter. She hesitated. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but if you ever want to talk about something other than all this, maybe over dinner, I'd like that." For the first time in months, I smiled. Dinner sounds nice. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was just simple, honest connection between two people who saw each other clearly. Meanwhile, Elise was unraveling. I heard through mutual friends that her colleagues were gossiping about the barbecue. Apparently, word had spread about how she'd treated me and how her boss had taken an interest. It wasn't hard for people to connect the dots. Elise's perfect image had cracked. She texted me again a week later. "Everyone at work is talking. You have no idea what this is doing to me." I read it twice before replying, "You did that to yourself." I didn't send it to be cruel. I sent it because it was true. A month passed. I met Diana again, this time at a small restaurant outside the city. We talked about our careers, our goals, and somewhere in between I realized how easy it felt. No pretense, no competition. She looked at me across the table and said, "You know, your wife, sorry, your ex-wife, she underestimated you. She thought confidence came from a title, but yours comes from character." "I used to think success meant winning," I said. "Now I think it means peace." Diana smiled. "Then you're already ahead." That night I went home and reread some of Elise's old messages, the ones from years ago, back when we were still us. I deleted them. Not out of anger, but closure. Some people say heartbreak destroys you. I think it just removes what's false. For years I'd been trying to live up to a version of myself that would make her proud. But the truth was I didn't need her pride. I just needed to remember my own worth. And as I looked out the window that night, I realized something simple, something powerful. Being respected feels better than being loved by someone who looks down on you. A few weeks after I left, I got an email that stopped me cold. It wasn't from Elise, it was from Diana, her boss. "Mark, I'd like to discuss a facilities project for our regional offices. Are you available this Friday at 2 p.m., Diana?" It was all business. Still, something about it felt like fate. I hesitated at first. Going back to Elise's office, the same place where she once pretended I didn't exist, felt risky. But this time I wasn't coming as anyone's husband. I was coming as a professional. I wrote back simply, "Friday works." When I walked through the glass doors, the receptionist greeted me warmly. The same walls that had once made me feel out of place now looked different, smaller, less intimidating. And then I saw her. Elise froze mid-sentence when I appeared in the hallway. "Mark," she said quietly. "What are you doing here?" "Meeting with your regional director," I replied. She reached out about a facilities upgrade. She blinked. "You're working with us." "Looks that way." Before she could say more, Diana appeared. Calm, confident. "Mark, glad you could make it. Let's talk in the conference room." As we walked away, I didn't look back, but I could feel Elise's eyes burning into me. Inside, Diana greeted me like an equal. "I wanted to tell you personally," she said. "We're expanding the contract to all regional sites. You came highly recommended." "From you?" I asked with a smile. She shrugged. "Maybe, but you earned it." There was no pity in her tone, no hidden motive, just respect. That alone meant more than Elise's approval ever had. When the meeting ended, Elise appeared at the door. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded once. Diana gave a polite smile and stepped out. Elise waited until we were alone before saying, "I didn't know you were still in touch with her." "I wasn't," I said. "This is business." She frowned. "You really think this is a good idea people will talk?" "Let them. They already did when you treated me like a stranger." "That's not fair." "No," I said evenly. "Fair would have been you standing beside me instead of pretending I didn't exist." Her voice dropped. "I miss you." I studied her face. "Do you, or do you just miss having someone who makes you look stable?" She flinched. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not. I'm just done pretending this marriage broke by accident." She looked small, then smaller than I'd ever seen her. "You're different now." I nodded. "I stopped caring what you think of me." And I walked out. Over the next few weeks, I focused on the project. Every visit to the office reminded me how far I'd come. Elise, meanwhile, avoided me. But I heard whispers coworkers saying how professional I was, how I'd handled things with class. Irony has a strange sense of timing. Then one evening, Diana called. "The team's hosting a dinner for partners next week," she said. "I'd like you to attend." I hesitated. "Would that be awkward?" She smiled through the phone. "Only if you let it be." The dinner was elegant, but relaxed. For once, I wasn't the invisible spouse, I was the guest of honor. Midway through the night, Diana stood and raised her glass. "I'd like to thank our partners for their hard work," she said, "especially BT Climate Solutions, whose service has been exceptional." People applauded. I nodded politely. Then across the room, I saw Elise. She wasn't clapping. She was staring quiet, tense, realizing the man she'd once dismissed was being celebrated by her peers. After the event, I found her outside by the parking lot. She didn't turn as I approached. "You really made your point tonight," she said quietly. "I wasn't trying to," I replied. "That's just what happens when people value integrity over image." She gave a shaky laugh. "You sound like her." Maybe because she understands what respect looks like. Her eyes filled. "Do you love her?" I paused. "I don't know, but I respect her. And that's a better start than love built on shame." Elise looked away. "I guess I had to lose you to realize what I had." "No," I said softly. "You had to lose me to realize what you lost in yourself." Then I walked away. That night, Diana texted, "You handled yourself with dignity tonight. I'm proud of you." For the first time in years, I felt proud, too. Not because I'd won anything, but because I hadn't let bitterness define me. Elise had built her world on appearances. I'd built mine on authenticity. And for the first time, mine finally stood taller. It's strange how quiet life becomes after a storm. For months, I'd been living in emotional noise arguments, tension, unspoken resentment. But now, mornings were calm again. I'd wake up, make my coffee, and actually look forward to the day. No phone buzzing with guilt-laced texts. No walking on eggshells. Just peace. The project with Diana's company wrapped up smoothly. It was my biggest contract to date, and it opened doors to new clients who'd heard about the work. Business was growing faster than ever. But more than that, I was growing. Elise, on the other hand, was fading into the background of her own success story. I didn't follow her life closely, but word traveled. Her promotion had been quietly delayed. Some colleagues avoided her. The story of the barbecue incident had turned into office legend whispered in break rooms dissected over coffee. I didn't take joy in it. I just recognized it for what it was, karma slow but precise. A few months later, Diana and I met again, this time for dinner. It wasn't business anymore. She greeted me with that same confident warmth I'd come to appreciate. "You seem lighter," she said as we sat down. I admitted. "For the first time in years, I'm not trying to prove anything." She smiled. "That's what happens when you stop living in someone else's shadow." We talked for hours, not about work, not about Elise, but about life. I realized how easy it was to just be myself with her. No filter, no need to perform. At one point, she said, "You know, your ex-wife made you sound like a man who couldn't hold a conversation. I think she just couldn't stand that you might have more to say than she did." I laughed. "That sounds like her." Diana looked at me thoughtfully. "You know what I see? A man who rebuilt himself without bitterness. That's rare." Her words hit deeper than she probably realized. For a long time, I'd measured myself through Elise's eyes. Now someone saw me for who I was and respected that. A few weeks later, Elise reached out one last time. It was a short message: "I'm transferring to Denver. Just wanted you to know." No apology this time. No bitterness either. Just resignation. I wrote back, "I wish you peace." And I meant it. Maybe that was the real ending, not revenge, not triumph, but acceptance. We were two people who wanted different kinds of validation. Hers came from being admired. Mine came from being respected. When Diana told me Elise had accepted a transfer, I just nodded. "Probably for the best," I said. She smiled. Fresh start for her, less tension here. Everyone wins. Then she added with a playful tone, "Besides, I'd rather talk about our future." "Future?" I raised an eyebrow. "Well," she said, stirring her coffee, "my lease is up next month. I was thinking of moving somewhere with more space, maybe room for two." I smiled slowly. "You sure about that?" She met my eyes, completely. It wasn't rushed or dramatic, just two people choosing each other for the right reasons. Months later, we moved into a small house outside the city. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, the kind of place where laughter fills the kitchen, where silence feels peaceful instead of tense. I hung up my tools in the garage, looked around, and thought about how far I'd come. Diana joined me, handing me a cup of coffee. "You know, she said your ex was right about one thing." "Oh yeah, what's that?" "You were too good for her. She just had the wrong definition of good." I laughed quietly. "I'll take that." She leaned against me. "Authenticity isn't something you can fake forever. Eventually people see the truth." I nodded, and the truth always wins. A few weeks later, I ran into one of Elisa's old co-workers at a networking event. She recognized me immediately. "Mark, wow, you're the guy from the barbecue story." I raised an eyebrow. "Depends which version you heard." She smiled awkwardly. "The one where your wife tried to hide you and her boss ended up offering you coffee." I said. "That one's true." "Well, you handled it with class," she said. "Everyone admired that. She didn't look so great after." I thanked her politely and moved on. But as I drove home that night, I realized something important: reputation doesn't come from defending yourself. It comes from letting the truth speak loud enough that you don't have to. Now when I look back, I don't see Elise as a villain. I see her as a lesson, one that taught me the difference between being loved and being valued. Love without respect is control. Respect without love is distance. But when you have both, that's partnership. And that's what I found with Diana. She didn't need me to impress anyone. She just liked who I was. The blue-collar guy with calloused hands, the man who fixed things, not just machines, but himself. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from our porch, Diana turned to me and said, "Do you ever think about her?" Sometimes, I admitted, but not with anger, more like gratitude. She made me realize I was living small to keep someone else comfortable. Diana smiled. "And now I live honestly," I said, "and I'll never apologize for that again." She reached over, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "That's the man I fell for." For a long time, I thought losing Elise was the worst thing that could happen to me. But it turned out it was just the first step toward finding myself and finding someone who wasn't ashamed to stand beside me. The truth is, life doesn't always give you justice wrapped in applause. Sometimes it gives you something quieter: peace, self-respect, a second chance. And when you finally learn to choose people who celebrate you instead of hiding you, that's when you realize losing the wrong person is the best win of all. Here's the next story. My name's Greta, I'm 25, and right now, I think I might have just ruined my life. Before I explain what happened, you need to know how I got here. Because it didn't start with lies or betrayal. It started with a normal, simple dream, a family, a career, and a man who loved me. I had all that once. Or at least I thought I did. When I was little, my life looked perfect from the outside. My dad was a pilot, always flying around the world, sending postcards from places I couldn't even pronounce. My mom was a model, always glowing, always surrounded by people who admired her. But what I really remember isn't the glamour, it's the emptiness. They were never home at the same time. I grew up with maids and routines instead of hugs. Still, they loved me the best way they knew how. They took a week off every month just to be together as a family. That week used to be my favorite time. Pancakes in the morning, movie nights, long talks before bed. For a while, I thought that was enough, until the day I gave my dad a handmade bracelet before his flight. He laughed, promised he'd wear it for luck, and kissed my forehead. That was the last time I ever saw him. The plane crashed. He didn't make it. 28 people died. The world just stopped. My mom fainted when she heard the news. Later, we learned she was pregnant. That baby, my little brother Eric, became the only light in the darkness that followed. She named him after Dad, but life didn't get easier. After giving birth, my mom tried to return to modeling, but they told her she wasn't camera-ready anymore. She'd gained a few pounds, and just like that, her career was gone. Bills piled up. We sold the house, the car, the jewelry. My mom took 2 jobs, cleaning houses by day, waiting tables by night, just so we could survive. I promised myself I'd make her proud. I studied hard, won a scholarship in cosmetology, and went off to college. It was far from home, but I called every week telling her I was okay even when I wasn't. To pay for rent, I worked part-time at a small grocery store. The pay was low, but it was honest work. That's where I met him, Noah. He was tall, clean-cut, with that quiet kind of confidence that made people listen when he spoke. At first, he was just a customer who came in every day buying random things, fruit gum, even things he clearly didn't need. Then one day he smiled and said, "You probably think I'm wasting money just to see you." I laughed. He was right. He was also a student a year ahead of me studying architecture. Kind, polite, funny. I didn't plan on falling for him, but I did. For months we talked after my shifts. He'd wait outside the store until closing and walk me to the bus stop. He asked about my dreams, my family, my mom's health. No one had ever cared like that before. I didn't tell him about my second job, the one I took out of desperation. I was working nights at a bar dancing to make ends meet. It wasn't something I was proud of, but it kept a roof over my head. Then came my 20th birthday. He surprised me with a silver necklace and asked me to be his girlfriend. He said he'd been waiting for the right moment to tell me he'd loved me since the day he met me. I said yes, even though I was terrified he'd one day find out about the bar. Noah came from a rich family. His father owned a shipping company. His mother had died when he was born, and he'd grown up with more pressure than love. Maybe that's why we connected. We both knew what loneliness felt like, even when people thought we had everything. We dated through college. He was focused, disciplined, always chasing something bigger. When I told him about my mom and brother, he insisted on meeting them. He came to our little apartment, brought flowers for my mom and a toy car for Eric. Within an hour, they adored him. That's when I knew this was the man I wanted to spend my life with. A year later, he proposed. He didn't do it with a crowd or fireworks, just the 2 of us at the park where we had our first date. He said, "You've been through enough storms. I want to be your calm." I cried and said yes before he even finished the sentence. We got married 6 months later. I wore a silver dress, not white. My mom said it looked like moonlight. Noah looked like the kind of man little girls dream of marrying. He designed our house himself, small but perfect, with big windows and a garden my mom helped plant. The honeymoon was magical. We went to Miami. Long walks on the beach, quiet dinners, laughter that felt endless. For once, I felt like life had given me back everything it took away. When we came home, we settled into our routine, Noah running his new architecture firm, me working as a makeup artist for models and actresses. Life felt complete, at least for a while. But happiness has a way of slipping through your fingers when you least expect it. Noah became busy, too busy. Late nights at the office, early mornings at meetings. The man who once waited hours just to see me was now too tired to talk at dinner. When I asked if something was wrong, he said, "Nothing. I'm just building our future." But somehow that future didn't seem to include me anymore. I started feeling invisible. He stopped noticing my new makeup looks or when I'd cook his favorite meals. The house felt cold, like a museum we both lived in separately. When I complained, he said I was acting childish. He told me to be patient, that success takes sacrifice. But how much of myself was I supposed to sacrifice before he looked at me again? One night after he texted that he wouldn't be coming home, I packed a bag and went to my mom's. I told her everything, the loneliness, the silence, how he didn't even look at me anymore. She sighed, squeezed my hands, and said, "Every marriage has seasons, Greta. Don't give up just because it's winter." I nodded. But inside, something in me was already changing. Something that would soon lead me to make the biggest mistake of my life. When people say cheating doesn't start with betrayal, they're right. It starts with loneliness, with silence that stretches too long, with the slow death of being unseen. That night, Noah texted me again, working late. "Don't wait up, no heart emoji, no love you, just business clean distant final." I sat there staring at the empty side of the bed, realizing I hadn't heard him laugh in weeks. The man who once couldn't stop calling me his light now spoke to me like an obligation. I tried to sleep, but the quiet pressed down like a weight. So I grabbed my keys and drove. No plan, no destination, just away. Rain had just ended. The streets shimmered under the streetlights. That's when I saw the bar, small, warm, with soft jazz drifting through the open door. The kind of place that made you forget the rest of the world existed. I don't even remember deciding to go in. Inside, it smelled like whiskey and heartbreak. People talked in low voices, the kind that carried stories they'd never tell sober. I sat at the counter, ordered a drink I didn't need, and told myself I'd leave after one glass. But one became two. That's when he spoke to me. Rough night, I turned. A man, maybe early 30s, sat a few stools down. Black hair, kind eyes, the kind that notice when someone's drowning even if they're smiling. He raised his glass slightly, a quiet offer of solidarity. "You look like you're trying to outdrink a bad day." I gave a small, tired laugh. "More like a bad year. Then you'll need stronger stuff," he said, and smiled. His name was Jack. He told me he was a doctor, a family physician at a local clinic. His uncle had raised him after his parents passed away, and he'd gone into medicine to take care of people like his uncle. There was something honest in his voice. Grounded. He wasn't loud or flirty, just easy to talk to, and that was dangerous. We talked for hours, about life, about work, about nothing. For the first time in months, someone was actually listening to me, not half listening while answering emails, not nodding just to end the conversation. When I laughed, he laughed with me, not at me. As I was leaving, he said, "You shouldn't drink alone. Not someone like you." I should have just smiled and walked away. But instead I said, "Then maybe next time, don't let me." He handed me his phone. Deal. When I got home, the house was dark. Noah hadn't come back. I stood in the kitchen staring at the note he'd left: "Presentation tomorrow. Don't forget to eat." I didn't know if I wanted to cry or laugh. I went to bed and texted Jack made it home. He replied instantly, "Good. Try to sleep, Greta. The world's kinder in the morning." But it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, things with Noah got worse. He worked late almost every night. When I called, he barely answered. When I tried to talk, he brushed me off with, "I'm tired." And I started waiting for messages from Jack instead. He texted me every morning, "Have a good day." He called sometimes just to ask how I was doing. When I told him about my makeup jobs, he said, "That's art, you know. Making people feel beautiful, that's a gift." I didn't realize how starved I was for kind words until then. One night I forgot to wear my wedding ring. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a quiet protest against the woman I'd become, waiting, hoping, pretending. When Jack asked if I was seeing anyone, I said no. The lie came out so easily it scared me. But he smiled, and for a moment the guilt didn't exist. He told me about his life, how he'd lost his uncle last year, how the house felt too quiet afterward. He said he missed coming home to someone. And I said without thinking, yeah, I know that feeling. We started meeting after work. Coffee first, then dinner, then movies. It felt innocent enough until it wasn't. He'd make me laugh until my sides hurt. He'd listen to me talk about Noah, though I never said his name. Once he said softly, "Whoever made you feel this lonely doesn't deserve you." I should have stopped him there. I should have defended my husband. But instead, I stayed quiet. When he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. My mom noticed before anyone else. She always could. One night, while we were having dinner, she asked, "Is there something you need to tell me?" I froze. "What do you mean?" She gave me that look the one mothers give when they already know the answer. "Greta, are you seeing someone else?" I dropped my fork. She sighed. "Oh, sweetheart." "No, I didn't plan it," I whispered. "It just happened." "Nothing just happens," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just heavy, like disappointment had a weight. "You're lying to him. And to yourself. That never ends well." I told her she didn't understand. That Noah had abandoned me. That I was tired of being alone. She said, "Then tell him that. Don't go looking for comfort in someone else's arms. It'll only break you more." But I didn't listen. Because Jack made me feel alive and Noah made me feel invisible. Then one evening, Jack was scrolling through my phone to show me a meme, and he paused. "Who's this?" he asked, holding up a photo me and Noah smiling at a park. My heart stopped. "That's my brother," I blurted out. "Really?" "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing a laugh. "We're close." He smiled. "You two look a lot alike." I just nodded and took the phone back, my hands shaking. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, "What are you doing?" I didn't have an answer. Meanwhile, Noah's career was exploding. New clients, new offices, new investors. He started smiling again, just not at me. He was polite calm, almost too calm. Sometimes that was worse than anger. I didn't know it then, but that calm was the quiet before the storm. Because one day soon, Noah would walk into his doctor's office and meet Jack. And that was the day everything I'd built came crashing down. I used to think secrets were safe as long as you were careful. I thought if I smiled enough, deleted the right texts, and played both lives perfectly, the truth would stay buried. But the thing about secrets, they have a heartbeat, and one day they start breathing on their own. Noah had been distant for weeks. He'd stop by the house just to grab files or change clothes, barely saying a word. He'd kiss me on the forehead, mechanical, detached, like a habit he was trying to quit. I told myself he was just tired, that things would get better when his new project launched. But deep down, I could feel something shifting. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even cold. He was quiet. Too quiet. And quiet, I've learned, is far more dangerous than rage. Then one afternoon, it all began to unravel. I was getting ready for work when he came home earlier than usual. His eyes looked strange, not tired, not furious, just empty. He dropped his bag on the counter and said nothing. I tried to make small talk. "You're home early." He didn't answer. Just walked past me into the bedroom. A part of me already knew. You can feel when the floor's about to give way. That night he didn't sleep beside me. He lay on the far end of the bed, staring at the ceiling. I reached out, touched his arm. Noah talked to me. He turned his face away. "What's there to say?" "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice shaking. He sat up suddenly, his tone sharp. "Wrong. You tell me, Greta. You tell me what's wrong." I froze. He'd never spoken to me like that before. The silence between us became unbearable. Finally, I whispered, "You're scaring me." He laughed, a sound that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm scaring you." That's rich. He got up, walked out, slammed the door behind him. I sat there for hours listening to the clock tick, my mind spinning. Did he know? Had someone told him no? There was no way. I'd been careful. I always was. Or so I thought. The next day, I went to see Jack. He hadn't replied to my texts for 2 days, which was unusual. When I got to his apartment, no one answered. I went to the clinic, but they said he was busy with a patient. Something felt wrong. I waited outside in my car for an hour. He never came out. I drove home heart-pounding, half from guilt, half from panic. When I walked in, Noah was there sitting on the couch, calm, composed, still wearing his work clothes. He looked at me for a long time before speaking. "Do you know, Dr. Jack, every nerve in my body froze. I tried to play dumb. Jack, no. Why?" He smiled, that polite, terrifying smile people wear when they already know the answer. "You don't know him." "Interesting. He knows you very well." My throat went dry. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I met him today. At my office. He's the new company doctor." My heart stopped. Every sound in the room disappeared, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, everything. He continued slowly, like a man dissecting the truth word by word. He told me about a woman he's been seeing, said she's beautiful, kind, a makeup artist. Said she's single, said he's in love with her. Noah's voice shook for the first time. He even showed me your picture. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. He told me her name's Greta, said she introduced him to her brother, named Noah. He looked at me, then straight into my soul. "So tell me, Greta, do you know who Dr. Jack is now?" Everything inside me collapsed. My knees went weak, and I just stood there trembling. I opened my mouth, desperate to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I could see the pain in his face, not fiery anger, but something far worse. Disbelief. Heartbreak. He stood up slowly, his hands shaking. "I didn't believe him at first," he said quietly. "I thought he was joking. But then he described your necklace. The one I gave you." I grabbed the chain around my neck instinctively. He noticed. His voice cracked. "You wore it while lying to both of us." I started crying, telling him it wasn't what it looked like, that I was lonely, that I never meant for it to happen. But every word made it worse. "Noah, please. I made a mistake." He cut me off. "A mistake." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a second life." He stepped closer, his tone cold. "I loved you more than anyone. I defended you when my father said you weren't right for me. And this is what I get." He turned away. "I don't even know who you are anymore." He packed a small bag that night and left. No shouting, no slammed doors this time, just quiet finality. I called. He didn't answer. I texted. He didn't read. I even went to his office, but his assistant said he wasn't in, even though I could see his car parked outside. I went to my mom's hysterical shaking. She listened in silence as I told her everything. When I finished, she didn't say "I told you so." She just whispered, "Now you understand what I meant, don't you? Patience costs less than regret." I cried for hours on her couch. I wanted to go back in time to that night in the bar, to the first lie, to the moment I said he's my brother. But there's no rewind in real life. Only replay. 2 days later, I checked my phone again and saw something I hadn't expected. Jack had posted a picture smiling beside another woman. The caption read, "New beginnings." My stomach dropped. He'd moved on. Just like that. Maybe he was never really mine. Maybe he'd just wanted someone to fill his own loneliness too. And now I had nothing, no husband, no lover, no job, no plan. Just guilt and silence. But I hadn't hit the bottom yet. That came later when Noah came home one last time and brought his lawyer with him. When you lose someone you love, it doesn't always happen in one moment. Sometimes it happens quietly across late dinners, unanswered calls, and the kind of silence that stretches too far to fix. But when the end does come, it comes like lightning. Quick, blinding, final. That's what it felt like the day Noah came back home. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 weeks. Every night I'd sit by the window hoping his car would pull into the driveway. It never did. The house felt haunted, full of echoes of what used to be his laughter, his voice the sound of him humming while sketching designs late at night. I'd walk past his empty chair and whisper, "Please come back." One morning there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, my heart jumped. It was Noah. He stood there in a dark suit looking sharp, cold, and unfamiliar like a stranger wearing my husband's face. Beside him stood another man holding a leather briefcase. "Noah," I whispered. He didn't smile, didn't move closer. "This is Mr. Collins," he said quietly. "My attorney." My stomach turned to ice. "Attorney, why?" He handed me an envelope. "You'll find everything explained in here." I didn't need to open it. I already knew. Divorce. I tore the envelope open anyway, my hands trembling. There it was, my name and his side by side, separated by the word verses. It didn't even look real. "We don't have to do this," I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. He sighed. "Greta, it's already done." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "No, it's not. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll end everything with Jack. He interrupted sharply. "End what? There's nothing left to end. You already did that for us." I started crying harder. "You don't understand, Noah. You left me alone for months. You stopped talking to me, stopped seeing me. What did you expect me to do?" He stared at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said quietly, "I expected you to stay, to trust me, not destroy everything because you were bored." That cut deeper than shouting ever could. He turned to his lawyer. "Tell her what she needs to know." The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading, calm, clinical, detached. "Mr. Carter is filing on grounds of infidelity. All joint assets will remain under his name due to the presence of evidence confirming the affair." I froze. Evidence. Noah looked straight at me. Messages, photos. "You weren't as careful as you thought." My legs went weak. He had proof. Every secret text, every lie, every night I thought I'd gotten away with all of it was there in front of him now. I whispered, "Please, Noah, don't do this." He didn't even blink. "I already have. You'll sign these papers today. And Greta..." He paused, his voice cracking for the first time. "You're not getting a cent. Not after what you did." Something inside me snapped. I threw the papers on the floor. "You think this is all my fault? You abandoned me. You stopped loving me. You chose your work over your wife, and now you want to play the victim." He didn't flinch. He just looked at me with this calm, exhausted sadness that made me hate myself even more. "I didn't stop loving you," he said softly. "I just stopped recognizing you." Then he picked up the papers, set them on the table, and turned to leave. The lawyer followed silent as a shadow. Just before stepping out, Noah stopped at the door. He looked back at me one last time. "I hope one day you realize love isn't about how someone makes you feel when things are easy. It's about who you choose when things get hard." Then he was gone. The next few days blurred together. I barely ate, barely slept. My mother tried to comfort me, but even she was different now, colder, quieter, as if she'd given up trying to protect me from myself. She said, "You can't fix something you keep breaking." I wanted to disappear. But life doesn't let you do that. It makes you watch as the pieces fall. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my workplace. They said they'd heard rumors about my personal scandal. They said it was bad for the company's image. They said they had to let me go. Just like that, another part of my life vanished. I sat on my bed, surrounded by unopened mail bills, lawyer letters, useless apologies from people who used to admire me. Then one afternoon, I got the final blow. Jack had posted a photo on social media. He was smiling, with another woman. The caption read, "Moving forward." I felt my stomach drop. So that was it. He'd used me as a distraction, a story he could walk away from, and I had destroyed everything for him. A week later, Noah came back one last time. He didn't come alone. He brought the same lawyer and a pen. He placed the papers in front of me and said quietly, "It's time." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I was pregnant, but the words wouldn't come out. Maybe I didn't want to use that as a reason for him to stay. Maybe I knew it wouldn't matter anymore. He looked at me one last time, eyes full of sorrow and exhaustion. I loved you once, Greta, but love can't survive in lies. Then he left for good this time. I sat there, the pen in my shaking hand, and signed my name. Each letter felt like a small death. When it was done, I stared at the papers and whispered, "You win, Noah." But it didn't feel like he'd won anything. It felt like we'd both lost. I walked to the window, clutching my stomach, realizing I was carrying the child of a man who'd already forgotten me, and divorced by the one who never stopped loving me. I thought that was the end of my story. But endings have a cruel way of hiding new beginnings inside them, because a month later, a single test strip would change everything and force me to face the kind of truth I'd been running from all along. You'd think once your world falls apart, there's nothing left to lose. But life has a cruel sense of humor. Just when you think you've hit bottom, it hands you a shovel. It had been a month since Noah walked out for the last time. The house was silent. Every room still smelled faintly of him, his cologne, his coffee, the paper scent of his sketches that used to cover the kitchen table. I'd packed away the wedding photos, but I couldn't bring myself to take down the silver necklace he gave me. It hung on the mirror like a ghost that refused to leave. I spent my days doing nothing. No job, no friends, no plan. Just long hours of staring out the window, replaying every choice that led me here. One morning I felt dizzy, a wave of nausea that knocked the air out of me. At first I thought it was the stress, or maybe I hadn't eaten properly in days. But when it happened again, I knew. I drove to the pharmacy, barely breathing, and bought a test. Back home, I sat on the bathroom floor staring at the small white stick like it held my entire life inside it. When the second line appeared, I froze. Then I laughed, a short, broken laugh that turned into tears. I was pregnant, and it wasn't Noah's. I didn't tell anyone at first. I couldn't. It felt like the universe's final punishment, one I deserved. I had betrayed the man who built me a home, and now I was carrying the child of the man who'd already moved on. For a while, I tried to pretend it wasn't real. But when the morning sickness grew worse, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went to my mother's house one evening and told her everything. She didn't react right away, just sat there staring at the wall. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired. "You're having his baby?" I nodded. She closed her eyes. "Then you need to grow up, Greta, because this isn't about you anymore." Her words hit harder than anything Noah had ever said. She wasn't angry, she was disappointed, and somehow that hurt more. I wanted her to hold me, to say it would be okay, but she didn't. She just said, "You made your choices. Now it's time to live with them." The next few weeks were a blur. I looked for work, but no one wanted to hire a makeup artist whose personal drama had already gone public. Noah's firm was respected in town. People whispered. Some called me the cheater. Others didn't say it out loud, but looked at me like I was a warning sign. I started living in my old room at Mom's. Eric, my little brother, tried to cheer me up by drawing silly pictures for the baby. He didn't understand, but his innocence was the only light left in that house. At night, I'd lie awake thinking about Jack. Should I tell him? Would he even care after all? He had someone else now. Still, I tried. I called. No answer. I messaged him, "I need to talk to you. It's important." Hours turned into days. Finally, he read it but never replied. That silence told me everything. He was gone. I felt trapped between guilt and survival. Mom worked long shifts. Eric had school. So I started going for walks anywhere just to keep moving. Sometimes I'd pass the old bar where I first met Jack. Other times I'd walk by Noah's office just to see if his car was there. It always was, but I never saw him come out. Once I stood outside for almost an hour, watching through the window. He looked okay, maybe even happier. That broke me more than anything else. I wanted to hate him for moving on so easily, but I couldn't. He'd loved me once deeply, completely, and I'd destroyed that. Then came the letter. A plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a final notice from the court the divorce had been processed. My name had officially changed from Mrs. Carter back to Greta Miller. I stared at it for a long time, tracing the letters with my finger. Just like that, my marriage existed only in memory. I took the paper, folded it neatly, and put it inside a small wooden box along with my wedding ring and Noah's old sketch of our dream house. I locked it and pushed it under my bed. Some doors needed to stay closed. That night, I sat in the kitchen with my mom. She poured tea and said quietly, "You're stronger than you think." I laughed bitterly. I don't feel strong. I feel like a walking disaster. She reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "Then rebuild. But this time, don't lie to yourself." Her words stayed with me. Weeks passed, the baby grew, and slowly so did I. I started helping out at a local salon, not as a makeup artist, just washing brushes and cleaning stations. The owner, a kind older woman named June, didn't care about my past. She said everyone deserves a second draft. That place became my refuge. I'd sweep floors during the day and talk to the baby at night. I'd tell them stories about their grandfather, the pilot, their Uncle Eric, and even about Noah, the man who once believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I never mentioned Jack. He didn't deserve a chapter in their story. One rainy morning, as I was walking home from the salon, I passed by a billboard. It showed Noah smiling beside a modern building, his new architectural project. The caption read, "Designed for a better tomorrow." For a moment, I just stood there, soaked in the rain, staring at his face. He looked peaceful. Maybe he finally got his better tomorrow. And maybe I could have mine too. That night, I wrote a letter I never planned to send. It began, "Dear Noah, you were right. Love isn't tested when things are easy. It's tested when everything feels impossible. I failed that test, but I'm learning. I'm carrying a reminder of every mistake I made and every lesson that came with it." I folded the letter, placed it in the same box as the ring, and whispered, "This isn't the end. It's just where I start again." For the first time in months, I went to bed without crying. The world outside was still messy, but inside something was healing. I didn't know what the future looked like, but for once I wasn't afraid to find out. Because maybe this time I'd build a life that wouldn't need saving. Time passed quietly. By the time my son Eli turned 1, the pain had softened into something else, not gone, just less sharp. Life had changed, but somehow it was still life. I worked at the salon again, smiled at clients, came home to my mom and brother, and spent every night rocking Eli to sleep. He'd laugh with his whole body, and every time he did, I felt a tiny piece of myself heal. Then one afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw someone standing by the parking lot. It was Noah. He looked different, older, steadier. We hadn't spoken since he gave me the divorce papers. He smiled faintly and said, "You look happy." "I'm trying," I answered. He nodded, eyes drifting to the stroller beside me. "He's beautiful. His name's Eli. That's a good name." For a while, we just stood there in silence, two people who had once shared everything and now shared nothing but memories. Finally, Noah said, "I wanted you to know. I forgive you. And I hope you forgive me too. We were young, and we both got lost. I swallowed hard. I already did. A long time ago." He smiled, one of those quiet smiles that said goodbye better than words ever could. Then he turned and walked away. No bitterness, no promises, just peace. A few months later, I ran into Jack at a grocery store. He froze when he saw me, maybe from guilt, maybe surprise. He tried to speak, but I stopped him. "It's okay," I said. "You don't owe me anything." He nodded, eyes soft. "You look stronger." "I am," I replied, and meant it. That was the last time I saw him. Now when I watch Eli sleep, I think about everything that broke and everything that survived. I lost a husband, a home, and a version of myself that believed love meant never being alone. But what I found, honesty, strength, peace, was worth rebuilding for. Life didn't turn out the way I dreamed, but it still turned out to be mine. And maybe that's enough. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.